And so, like the great majority of men, I believe, I lived my life under many illusions, and I was just a server to my wife and to my family, and that's the role that I was somehow given, and I assumed it was my role, in fact, and I attempted to fulfill it. And so when we reach old age, as I have done now, and very often the family will have been dissolved. Either the wife has sought a divorce because you're no longer useful, or you've walked out, or you're separated, or whatever. Um, Really, your role in society now is to um, get sick and die, effectively. And in the meantime, amuse yourself by eating cakes and watching sport and stuff on television. I think this is the standard fare. I'm sure the doctor would tut a little bit, but more or less take as much medicine as you can to speed up the process, of course, and you shouldn't last for too long. And then any chattels that you possess will pass automatically, or you might want to write a will, but more or less automatically to your offspring. And if they have indeed cared for you and supported you, I'm sure that many people would say, well, that's perfectly right. But the fact of the matter is that nobody wants you to thrive at this time in your life. And if you are thriving, then you will attract just resentment. It's far better to have you losing your mind and becoming doddery, so that pleasantries can be said of you and you can be patted and hugged and called a dear fellow, than that you should be contemplating purchasing a motorcycle and getting tattoos and going to live in Vietnam. Those sorts of things are just, you're not going to have any supporters for ideas like that. Just generally, I'm not even speaking about one's own family. You could extend it to society at large, because you're moving outside the accepted realm. And although you're not harming anybody, it's not something that you will be encouraged to do. And nobody will support you in those endeavors. You have to do them alone. And this is the way that I'm thinking at the moment. And I'm sure that many men are in my position, because most men are, as I am and have spent all my life, just providers. They call us beta males. We've mainly just spent our life in submission to our wife or wives, those who've remarried, and we see it all around us. Not all men, there are exceptions, of course, but they're quite rare, and they kind of stand out. I think you see it, because their behaviour is different. So that's just my thoughts on the subject. The way of getting capital for me, I have no money, but I do own a house which I inherited from my father. Although not this house, but I inherited the cash that enabled me to purchase it from my father, who was a careful saver. And my only access to cash really, apart from working, and I find now that not so much that my abilities have ended, I'm still capable, but the agencies are not contacting me and not sending work because I think I have started to dedicate more time to walking and exercising and doing things that are actually going to benefit me rather than sitting endlessly in front of a screen. I'm still happy to do it, um, but only for limited periods now. And so, what happens in my line of work, and perhaps anybody else who's working in a freelance capacity, as your willingness to accept work begins to drop off, perhaps at a moment when there's not very much demand, then the work will go to colleagues and the agencies stop contacting me. And I'm very loath to contact an agency and ask for work. I think that's a very weak position and I will never do it. Um, so, although I have a pension which will allow me to live frugally uh, for many, many years, I'm sure, I can release the equity on my house. Effectively, I sell my house, but continue to live here until I die. And that will give me a percentage of the value of my house in cash. I would take it. You can take it as a monthly amount. And this is, it's an action that's, for a man in my position, it would be heinous because at least if I were living with my wife, then the justification would be, well, it's for your mother and so on and so forth, because then the result is that your offspring don't have anything to inherit once you're gone. And it depends, I suppose, on the relationship that one has with the family. Um, as a beta male, as somebody who's been under the thumb, shall we say, of with the ideals of feminism and gynocentrism and what actually amounts to female superiority. Quite often, I think a wife in the following divorce or following separation or things of this matter, or even beforehand, will have just there will have been if there was a narrative in the home, then the children will have been influenced by it, of course, and influence is one thing, but of course, young people can think for themselves and should do, but it's a very, very strong narrative, and many people do adhere to it. Society at large, if you want to conform to the societal norms, then you would take a kind of gynocentric view of the world, and quite likely lead to the conclusion that there is such a thing as a patriarchy, and that the patriarchy is the problem with the world. However illogical that may seem to me now, I can see that, once you start distorting the truth, then there's no limitation really to where you can end up. So there's a likelihood that your family that your offspring would reject you as a father, at which point really you have no further, I think, obligation toward them. So whether I will end up, riding a motorcycle along a beach in Vietnam or somewhere like that in the next 12 months remains to be seen, because I'm quite a timid man, actually, and I do enjoy talking, But you never know what might happen, and I am quite persuaded with the idea of freeing up some capital by um, releasing the equity in the house. I see no reason not to, actually, because it's going to end up in the hands of the bank anyway one day, isn't it? God bless.